I would argue that a lot of the stuff that people consider canonical within Star Wars is in fact kind of not. Now, no one's going to like this video, I'm going to get a lot of angry comments, but I want to put it like this. The way things happen in Star Wars isn't necessarily canonical. What happens is. The benefit for everyone is that you can reimagine everything as though Genndy Tartakovsky had animated it, and that everything in the entire Star Wars canon was that level of epic. So let me explain. Right. There was an interview with like one of the filmmakers, and he was just like, oh yeah, no, in Star Wars, none of the space battles are diegetic. The fuck does that mean? So diegetic, or diegesis, I forget the fucking term. If something is diegetic, it means that it is like canonically happening in the narrative. If a character puts a record on the record player and it plays music and like everyone within the scene seems to like hear the music and groove out to it, that is diegetic music. If a pop song comes on in an animated movie, probably not. In, I think, the special features of Return of the King, when Sam rescues Frodo, and they're like, he's trapped in an attic somewhere, he apparently asks one of the lighting directors, hey, shouldn't there not actually be any light, like, in this scene? Where is the light coming from? And apparently the lighting director said, same place the music is. He's saying that the light is not diegetic, that there wouldn't actually be light in that scenario, that it is just a creative decision for readability. Just a creative decision that allows the audience to actually know what's going on. These are creative choices for practicality's sake. So, when the Star Wars guy said that none of the Star Wars space battles are actually diegetic, what does that mean? So he was really talking about something being only semi-diegetic, like that thing happened, but it happened in a different way, and we're just doing an artistic thing to make it more interesting. Not necessarily more interesting, but more practical. Let's get back to that. So he was saying that space battles in this setting would actually be happening at like thousands and thousands of kilometers away with like massively powerful weapons at like reasonable fractions of the speed of light. So like these ships need like immensely powerful targeting computers just to fucking hit anything. That's not very interesting to have on film. So instead what they have is like two capital ships like 20 feet from each other with like fighters zooming in between them, and that's more interesting. I would argue that you could do the necessary world building to have it that, like, you would actually have capital ships like that. I feel like you could do that pretty easily. Like, give me a paragraph. Not even a long one. I could do that shit in 3 sentences. But instead, the filmmakers are perfectly comfortable just being like, oh yeah, no, things don't actually happen in Star Wars the way they are seen to happen. That's all just creative interpretation. Which has implications. And a good implication, a really good one, is that the fight between Palpatine and the Jedi Masters would actually probably the most epic shit anyone has ever seen. But they couldn't figure out like a practical way of doing that, like in live action in the films. So we got a shitty one. Sorry. So I want you to reimagine everything that happens in Star Wars as though Genndy Tartakovsky was animating it, and it was that level of epic all of the time. Because that is probably closer to the canon. But like this has big implications for people like power scalers and stuff like that. Because this kind of thing happens all the time, and not just Star Wars. In bloody everything, a lot of the way that things happen isn't entirely diegetic. Batman. Every Batman comic for the past, like, 20 years. A lot of the superhero movies and stuff like that, they're just like, oh no, that definitely would have killed that dude. Canonically, these characters do not kill. That whole thing was just an artistic interpretation that was trying to make it more dramatic by definitely having killed that dude. The canon of the narrative, it did not. All those times that Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, knocks a bunch of guys off the cliff and they definitely died. No, they didn't. He actually, in the narrative, came up with something cleverer than pushing people off cliffs. Now, this makes things like power scaling and taking things a bit too seriously really difficult. Because very often, the way things happen is almost entirely irrelevant, almost entirely artistic interpretation. All that matters is what actually happens. What can we take away? So one of the criticisms, for example, the Acolyte, was that the bleeding of the Kyber crystal wasn't dramatic enough. In both that case and the case of Vader bleeding his crystal, both of these cases are different artistic interpretations of the same thing, both of which can largely be thrown away and just taken as what did canonically happen in these cases. So you've got cases where it's like, it looks like this character must be so much more powerful than that character, but then when they actually meet, the other one, absolutely kicks their ass. And what's going on is, the mistake was choreography. The issue was the creative interpretation and the depiction of what was happening. I think a really good example of this is Samus Aran from the Metroid games. So because she's in side-scrolling 2D things and pixel art things, but also the Metroid Prime games, which are 3-dimensional, you can have the Samus in this game is way stronger than the Samus in that game because The bad guy they were taking on was just like the entire like left whatever side of the screen, probably right side of the screen in this case. When in the three-dimensional games they couldn't kind of get their heads around how to animate that. So yeah, of course there's going to be a problem. All that really remains when you boil it down is that Samus Aran deals with planetary level problems, like on a Tuesday. That remains consistent. Often they explode, by which I mean the planets. They explode. Most of the time, regardless of whether the programmers and like the character artists can like present that well enough. By the way, the Metroid Prime games have some amazing concept art. Like, really do look it up. Like, regardless of the artistic interpretation, all of Samus's adventures are like planetary scale. Like, they receive a distress call from a planet that's about to be torn apart by dimensions, and they're like, oh, well, I get about, oh, wait, no, I have to meet up with the girls on Friday, and it's Tuesday. Nah, I'll be on time. And I work it out, because that's the concept of the character, is they're dealing with things on a planetary level, regardless of the artistic interpretation. I think that sort of a thing is very important. If you were to then import Samus Aran into any other setting, that should be the one thing that remains. Then there's like the Hyrule Warriors, the like Dynasty Warriors Zelda game. And all of the characters, like Link, gets a massive buff. Like, he's absolutely terrifying. He's rushing around like taking out hordes of monsters and stuff like that. Because like the canonically, he is like the most powerful character in all of Hyrule. And if we scale like what's going on in Hyrule up, then he should be scaled up. It's just a different artistic interpretation. Like, the level to which the way things happen in any form of media is artistic interpretation means that getting down to what actually happened, you may need to reduce purely down to the concepts of what's happening. For example, if you were to import Samus Aran into the 40k universe, she would still be one of the most powerful entities in that setting. She's a planetary problem solver. That's more powerful than Primarchs. I mean, like, on her own, she's more powerful than Primarchs. So when it comes to Star Wars, when the filmmakers themselves are very clear in, like, their, oh yeah, no, the creative interpretation is entirely, like, semi-diegetic, the way you approach it, you're not going to be happy about this, right? You're already writing your angry comments, I can tell. What I'm saying is, particularly if you have the filmmakers being like, oh yeah, things are only semi-diegetic, then you may need to rethink the way you're analyzing texts. I'll leave that there. Also, I'm gonna rewatch Genndy Tartakovsky's miniseries, because that shit was epic as fuck. Just imagine that everything that happens in Star Wars is that level of epic. I think that's gonna make it feel better, right?